Okay, so pardon the mess. This is the car as it sits. So what I suggest you do is go harvest these plugs out of a 30R car, whether it's the Tribeca or an Outback or a Legacy. You'll need those plugs to patch into your link, which is what I did if you're going to go this route. What that avoids is like having to repurpose the stock Hawkeye plug, because you only get this plug with the 25i, you don't get this one. And yeah, I don't know, it's just the way that I did it. You can do it however you want, but basically that runs into the cabin. I did almost all of this outside of the car. Now I'm just interfacing with the stock ECU plugs, and I know this looks bad, but I wasn't expecting company. So link, ExtremeX, you got two plugs, right? Your A and B plug right there. And don't mind the wire coloring either, because that stuff doesn't matter, right? It's just pin to pin. And what I did was soldered and made all my connections to the engine harness that I could before I even put it in the car, right? So I just continuity tested between, say, the coil signal wire and pin, 1, 2, 3, 4 on this plug is injector or ignition 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see. So you got, ignition 1 through 4 on A, and then 5 and 6 will end up being on B. You'll end up repurposing 7 and 8 for other things like fuel pump activation. So yeah, same with the injectors. I just went continuity test. I didn't even use a schematic, right, for the engine harness stuff, because I could literally just take a meter and go from, solenoid for AVCS straight to, whatever wire corresponded at this plug. And then I just made my connection to the wire, or to the actual link harness. So I had like a 3-foot patch cord basically that went between the two of them. And that has worked. So like right now, we got it a little, this is the first link that I've wired in for myself. I did an ExtremeX for a CRX, and that worked great. So I was like, yep, I'm going to do the link on this because it's a little bit cheaper and it still does the things I need it to, like drive-by-wire. So I went through and, like right now I can roll this thing over because I just have this little remote operator to crank it so that I could test things like, oh, is it getting cam signal? Is it getting crank signal? On the ECU here, let's fire this thing up. Hold please. So like this is the stock 25i engine plug, right? I pulled it back through the firewall with the grommet out so that I could run my stuff through. And then what I've done is I've tapped into like main relay ignition power for the corresponding things. Like this wire normally powers the coils in the Hawkeye, so that's what's running the coils in this car. Like if you look at these connections here, hold on. So like Hall effect sensors and other things that need 12 volts, and then you've got fuel injection here and coil here, and those three essentially go to the 3 key-on ignition wires that are present at this plug. And this will all get cleaned up more once it's done, but like here's pin or plug 136 for the stock ECU, and I have made multiple connections there. As you can see, I still have all 4 plugs. I can still plug in the stock ECU, and with the stock ECU plugged in, it automatically activates your main relay and your fuel pump relay for you as far as the priming stuff goes. I don't know if it would continue to run the fuel pump if it doesn't see RPM or something, so that's why I'm just getting rid of the stock ECU. I can always plug it back in. I could always run this back out and plug in a normal motor if I wanted to. But the idea here was to, minimally invasive, but still get the features that I need. So like right now, this is, I believe, starter input for the ECU, so I can do cold start enrichment. And then there's tack wire is this one here. And I've got main relay activation, which is black. fuel pump, which is green. You know, this is just the wire colors that I'm using, but that's what these are here. So like right now, and since I don't have the ECU plugged in, I can just ground that. You can hear it. And that activates main relay. That activates drive-by-wire relay. All right, so, and what I'm just using that relay to feed power because the Link wants its own, and you could probably figure out how to wire this in without using an external relay. Like if you know the pinouts, if you want to look into it for your, and the location of your normal drive-by-wire relay, then you don't necessarily need this. But anyway, this was the faster and easier way that I could do it. So I just wired in my own relay to control power for, because it's like a fail-safe for the drive-by-wire system. Now what I've got left is like, this is the remaining wires from the ECU. I'm sorry, from the engine harness that I still have to connect if they're needed. So anyway, with those relays activated, I get power here, 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 and the ECU will activate them eventually. I mean, I'm just grounding it because that's what the relay needs to see as a negative trigger in order to fire up. Just a sec. So Link software, right? So I don't have the ECU plugged in right now, so it can't find it with the USB. But even though I don't have that plugged in, I can sit at home and look at, I'll just cancel this real quick. So here's all your inputs and outputs, right? It's all set up for you. You've got injection, ignition. So like, there you go. Injector 7 is being used to control the fan. Injector 8's AVLS, and same with ignition. Ignition is fan 2, 8 is fuel pump. This guy already set up all this stuff, and I don't know. It's usually, you know, the best art is steel, right? So it's somebody else's stuff that he's used and then changed. Anyway, this is what was available to me, so this is what I used. And then you just have all of your wires, every wire that comes out of that ECU, either whether it's an input or output, so analog output for like oil pressure and all of this stuff. Once we plug it in, all these values will change. So let me go ahead and plug this in so I can show you that it kind of works. Okay, so ECU is plugged in. Ignition's on. That's going to get annoying pretty quick, but I'll go plug in that seatbelt here in a second. So ECU controls, connect to ECU. So like, there you go. We're online, right? So with the ignition turned forward, I can grab that little remote control that I've got. And you'll see like ignition switch is active right now. And if I turn it off, it turns off, but it holds power for 5 seconds for the ECU. 3, 2, 1. There you go. Hold power is off. So now the ECU is technically turned off, right? Anyway, we turn that back on. And as I roll this over, should see those injectors and ignition. Oh, almost fired that time. Wow. So there you go, dude. That's for a startup, actually. That hadn't started until just now. That is awesome. Okay, so yeah, anyway, I got totally sidetracked because I didn't expect that to fire, because it hadn't yet. I hadn't rolled it over much either, though. So anyway, that's awesome. That sounds good. This thing doesn't have the O2 sensors, right? It's just dumping manifolds right now. But I do have a CAN Lambda. You'll want this. If you don't have it, it's the one thing that you'll probably want to spend money on. Unfortunately, it's not cheap, but like apparently these are super important as far as making them run correctly. And that's like your wideband. It comes with the bung, comes with a little a separate harness that you need for it too. That it's a Deutsch connector that makes it like plug and play, and then you just power and ground it. But anyway, I digress. I'm sorry, dude. I got totally sidetracked because I was like, holy shit, it runs. So anyway. You know, I'm using, so this is the stock Impreza airbox right now, stock Impreza MAF, and I just tapped into the intake air temp wire for that. It's a MAP car, it uses that. It's not going to use the mass airflow sensor, so just MAP and then air intake, and once I get it hooked up, the O2 sensor. So anyway, I guess that hopefully that gets you an idea of where you're going. If I had focused on this more and like actually, you know, steady worked on it for days on end like I normally do things, then I'd probably be fine. And it would have been running a long time ago, but being as it is that it's winter and I've just been busy doing other things, when I come back out here, I'm like, oh yeah, what was I doing? Oh yeah, okay, let's hook that up and let's check this. And so it's taking a little bit longer than normal, but I can't tell you how stoked I am that just started. So anyway, just let me know if you have any questions, man.